Well, first, I would like to express my appreciation for the opportunity to talk about such an interesting area that you will hear about. And I also would like to introduce Monsieur Luc Boyer from the French Embassy in Washington, who is detached to Houston as a technical representative. Now, the interesting thing is that this project started 18 years ago. So I have prepared a partly technical, partly historical presentation, which I hope will make it more interesting. That worked. In 1999, 3 explorers who had already worked for 30 years in East Africa and Madagascar, Giovanni Flores from Italy, Don Rusk, who worked for Gulf, great company, Don Rusk, who worked for Amoco, still around, and myself with Conoco. We decided that in view of the advances in drilling and production technologies in deep water, the time was right to start what you call in business a new play, a new area. Geologists always have some ideas they want to put forward. And that was in the Mozambique Channel. From the work we had done in East Africa and in Madagascar, pointed to the existence of several petroleum systems in the Mozambique Channel. But again, the technology was not allowed to drill in deep water. And now in 1999, it was right where it should be. So what we did, we went ahead and we knew that France had done a lot of work in the area, tremendous amount of work with research vessels from 1972 to 1989, and you can see these are what we call the legacy data. So we made a deal with the French government to license these data. We added about 102 wells, and we published a report, RBA, Rusk, Bertagne and Associates, which was called Petroleum Geology and Geophysics of the Mozambique Channel in 2003. It was a bestseller. It was bought by all the majors, some large independents like Anadarko. In turn, we gave a complimentary copy to Mozambique and to Madagascar. And those countries, based on the data that they had and advice from their counselors, from the technicians who worked with them, had bid rounds. Companies responded in 2010 in the areas 1 and 4 in here, Anadarko and Eni, the old Egypt, had discoveries, and the rest is history. We had access to 35,000 kilometers of seismic, scientific data. Again, the French did a tremendous amount of work from a scientific standpoint. They established the migration of Madagascar away from Somalia. They found what we call the Davy fracture zone. They call it the Davy Ridge. And we realized it was a very exciting area because, again, from a petroleum standpoint, there were several petroleum systems in the area. So that was the start. Where we are today, you can see now that there are over 100, in fact it's more like 120,000 kilometers of state-of-the-art data available to the industry, some of which required by oil companies, by oil operators, other by geophysical companies. And you can see that the area is ripe for a lot of activity, while in actual fact there are very few permits which have been, or concession which has been awarded. Basically, this is all available. Exxon is here in the Algoche block, Exxon and Total. And then some of the companies in here, but all of that is open, and all of the Malagasy offshore is open, and a good part of the French acreage, which is right here. France has a considerable amount of territory there. All that is ready for petroleum exploration. So it took about 18 years to get there, but I think right now the area is prone to excellent exploration work. Now, back to the Davy Fracture Zone. In about 2003, there was a presentation here by a group. I'm trying to find out, or I'm trying to remember. Oops, sorry about that. Yeah, put it in my pocket. It was a group called Keith and Rasmussen, and the presentation was The Cracks of the World. What they showed is that the world is full of major fracture zones, and that next to those fracture zones, you most of the time find very prospective petroleum systems. Of course, the best example is the San Andreas Fault in California, which has those recurrent producing formations, and I'll go into that a little later. So the Davy Fracture Zone stretches from Somalia all the way to the tip of Madagascar, and what we are covering here is only the portion, again, from Mozambique to here. That's the area of interest. What we have found is that the fault is really a boundary between the Tertiary Basins area, where Anadarko have the discoveries, the Carimbas Basin right here. You have the Lucerda Basin here, and then you have the Madagascar Microplate, because this is part of Madagascar. The production here is basically Meso-Cenozoic, while over here it has more potential, and I'm going to go into this. This is the cross-section on the east side of Mozambique Channel, from Madagascar to the Davy Fracture Zone here. As you can see, we have, and by the way, this is constructed, this geoseismic section is constructed from seismic lines. We have eliminated the wiggles to make it more readable, but this is based on seismic data. It's not a diagram projecting a possible situation. These are facts. And as you can see in Madagascar, we have wells that have been drilled all the way to Permo-Triassic, which is one of the petroleum systems, which has produced right here the Bemulang tar sands, where we have 21 billion barrels of biodegraded oil. Then you have the Tsimirur and Fulakar areas, where you have 8 billion barrels of heavy oil. So we're in oil country. Now the other side, again, you're going from here to there, slightly enlarged. Again, you've got a very thick Cretaceous, very thick Tertiary, but by the same token, in 2,000 meters of water, it's not commercially viable, at least right now, to go to some of these deeper horizons. So what has happened, the companies that are prospected, either onshore or near shore, have basically prospected the Tertiary. This is a chronostratigraphic chart all the way from Africa to Madagascar. It took the two geologists, Giovanni Flores and Don Rex, 6 months to do that, and that's been used a lot in the business. The USGS has used that as a base. I'm not going to go into the details because it would take hours to describe this, and it's available to you. But you see those green slides there. These are the petroleum system based on the 102 wells, which we have studied foot by foot. So what we're saying is, based on the data that we have available, definitely there are petroleum systems, in the Tertiary, in the Cretaceous, in the Jurassic, and in the Promo-Triassic. So it is a very attractive area to be involved with. This is a map of the geomorphology of the Mozambique Channel, and we don't deserve the credit for that. It's prepared by Stéphane Royard from Paris University, who did a tremendous amount of work here. And it's very interesting because you can see that here is the area 4, right here. This is where the Anadarko and Egypt discoveries are. And this is the area we're working on. But you can see that here, the Davy fracture zone was in effect a concrete wall that existed. And the Rovuma Basin was diverting its waters into here, hitting the wall, creating eddies, and you had turbidites being deposited in the Rovuma Basin, and you had the perfect in situ generation system. You had the anoxic conditions, you had the fine sands from the river, coarse sands from the erosion of the ridge, and then you had some tight possibly shales who acted as seals. And this system was apparent in a well right here somewhere drilled by BP in 1955 called the Mandawa 7. And it pointed out to the fact that we definitely had a very attractive petroleum system. Now, I'm bringing the subject of Karoo transforms. This is one of them. It's been mapped and it goes all the way onshore Madagascar. It's called the Ranotsara Fault. Now, in East Africa, besides the Davy fracture zone which go north-south, you have a constant recurrence of these Karoo fossil transforms. And one thing we have learned that we didn't know before is that wherever the Davy fracture zone encounters one of these transforms, it changes character. Rayard, Villogeux, Ségoufin, Patria, these French researchers have prepared the way for us because they clearly state that in this area, in the Davy fracture zone, this is a pull apart. In this part, it's really a dextral strike slip fault, and in here it's a simple down to the west. Now, in the old days, we were looking for oil right here next to the shore. But you can see that the Zambezi Delta, which has a much stronger flow of water than the Rovuma, was literally demolishing this whole area here and was depositing those huge amount of sands right in here. And again, you have the same condition here as you do here. You've got the Zambezi fluvial deltaic sequence. You have the fine sands, which are being deposited. You have coarse sands, and you do need some seals. If you have that, you may have a producing area here, which is the same size as here, and probably 4 times larger. So this is a prospect that eventually, because geologists are very astute persons, they will eventually draw this thing. So you can see that this picture of today tells us what has happened in the past. I want to speak briefly about the discoveries in Tanzania, because even though we give credit to Anadarko and Egypt, INI, for their dynamism, really they just followed production which has been found by Egypt in 1974, in Songo Songo, right here, and in Nazi Bay, right here, by Egypt again in 1982. You will note that to get those discoveries produced, it took until 2004 here and 2006 here. Nobody was interested in the area. I remember during these older days, everybody felt the Mozambique Channel is 2 things, gas and volcanoes, and we don't want either one of them. Also, this is my interpretation based on the seismic data I have here. There is one of these transforms again, and you can see that the production area, and this is Mozambique here. This is the Ruma River, which is the boundary between Tanzania and Mozambique, and this is the new these are the new discoveries in Mozambique, and here too. But again, you could see these are along the Davy fracture zone, which we happen to know consists of 3 anéchelon faults, simple, like south of Madagascar. Here we're going into different systems. Again, I insist on the fact that every time you cross one of these transforms, you have a different tectonic system. These are the discoveries offshore Mozambique. It's a little bit confusing. The coastline is here, right here. So this is onshore and this is offshore. This is history. It's documented now that they have over 100 wells in the area, basically 60 producers and 40 injectors. You will note that you do have, again, the Davy fracture zone, which comes right through here. That's the wall. That's a concrete wall, right here. And then you could see these transforms coming southeast, northwest, so that the tectonic grain of these fields is much more complex than it would appear at first. However, in the old days, we paid a guy called an interpreter, a geophysicist, who would tell you what's going to happen. Right now you have 3D. So both Anadarko and E&E just cover this whole area with 3D and better not to worry about the different systems. The 3D tells more of the fault star, the second order drag faults, and so on and so on. So thanks to 3D, we now have a very well-defined petroleum system here, which is all tertiary. What I'm driving at is that even though they did a great job, still they're playing an old established petroleum system, which is the in situ production, entrapment, and production of oil in the tertiary. Anadarko drilled a well here called the Ironclad, right here. They did find oil in the Cretaceous, and they weren't interested in producing it, because it's a known fact that oil companies will try to make as much money as they can from the shallow production rather than going to the deeper. Now, this is where we, as Marex and Sapetra, our partners, are. You can see the refracture zone here. This is the area 1 and 4, right here. But you could see that the area is wide open for acreage. The boundary between Madagascar and Africa is basically right here, except for the strong position of France right in the middle here. And what you see in yellow, this was our original concession area, 53,000 square kilometers. There is what they call a neutral zone between France and Madagascar. This is Madagascar here, and we have both of these blocks. The neutral zone is because the French government decided at some point in time to review their boundaries and unilaterally moved their concession rights to the northwest. So this is neutral territory, which has been claimed by a small Texas independent. You always have one who's going to do that, you know, he's a pretty smart guy. But again, you could see that what we map here, and I won't go into this, you could see those transforms, and where we are when we talk about prospects. You know, in the pledge, like the Mozambique Channel, the IFP and the BRGM ran a study, and I think you were also involved with that. And so we know that the commerciality of a field here is 500,000 barrel minimum, probably 500,000, 1 billion, close to 1 billion. So in a frontier area, you're looking at really, there are over 70 leads in here, but there are basically 6 mega prospects. this one here, which is called Daniel or Sura, from a French research vessel. We have Bitsi here, which is for the term Bitsileo, which is a Malagasy tribe. So we call it Bitsi North and Bitsi South. And then we have what we call Magua, which is one of the local names, right in here. Now, the prospects have been mapped by 2D, by 3D, and if the price of the barrel was a little higher, probably they would be drilled. Right now, there is not much attractiveness. What we did as companies, we had to, you can see again the blocks, this is the Juan de Nova block, French. This is the Malagasy block here, Barrel Profond, and we ran, first we bought some spec survey from geophysical companies, then we ran our own survey, the little grid, and then we ran 3D, right here, and all that is 3D. And so the area is, as far as we're concerned, pretty mature on our acreage. This is a presentation to show basically the structure. We have a dividing line here. We have the Turonian in Belleau and the Middle Jurassic in the Juan de Nova block. You can see the debris fracture zone, which is coming right through. Now it's turning volcanic because, again, I could talk for hours about that. Madagascar moved away from Africa, but then the next big event was for India to cut loose from Madagascar and move to the north on a couple of railroad tracks. You can see them in the ocean bottom and hit Eurasia, and you have the Himalayas. Well, when that happened, it was a tremendous upheaval in the area, and this whole block, so to speak, moved down because you removed all the proximity of India, moved down and south. And we know that the Tertiary is thickening from north to south. Again, I'm covering a lot of things very fast. You have a question? The prospect plate type in the Bitsi prospects, again, these are the prospects down here on the debris fracture zone. They're basically a thick fluvial-deltaic sequence deposited in a Jurassic Basin overlain by Cretaceous coarse clastics and capped by the Turonian volcanics. The basin was inverted during the Sindrift sequence in Cenomanian-Turonian time, probably due to the injection of crystalline basalts, and the maturity is believed to be late. This is a view of Bitsi South. It's a 5 times exaggeration. So when people were talking about volcano, this is not a volcano. I'll show you a one-on-one reproduction later on, but you can see right here the Jurassic Basin, quite well defined, and my son, Alan Bertagne, who is also a geologist, displaced this. He was the first one to show the existence of a Jurassic Basin. All you do on the computer, you put that on 0 and you could see your basin. So we knew very early in the game that's definitely a genuine basin. You do have influx of probably volcanics in there, but again, this is the frontier area. You can see here the accretionary wedge right here. There are excellent prospects right in here. And of course, you have got a full section over here, much thicker. It's very thick here, but it's thick because you have a lot of tertiary right here, a regular Cretaceous, while over there you have a thin tertiary and the Cretaceous. So this is, by the way, 2,000 meters of water. So again, there's some limitation. This is another line. This is northeast, southwest. It's a slightly different processing, maybe a little better defining the tertiary here, and the boundary between, you can see the Jurassic Basin here. This is on the north. Now, here the question was asked, do you think these Turonians are going to be seals? We know that these volcanics, which are all over the place, again, the French scientists did a marvelous work of mapping this area as scientists. And this Turonian sequence is all over the place. It's onshore in Madagascar. It cooled very quickly, so it wouldn't be a very good seal onshore Madagascar, but it's a much better seal here when it cooled underwater. I won't go into this, but you can see the erosional sequence, and by the way, all of these French scientific documents were single-fold, double or three or four-fold. They were a tremendous help, and we're still using them today to better understand the behavior of some of these structures. That's the north-south. Now, these again are those famous transforms I'm talking about. They are northwest, southeast, and you can see the boundary there where you have the basement, you have the Triassic here, you've got the Jurassic, you've got the Cretaceous, and you've got the Tertiary. And this hasn't been tested. This is the actual one-on-one, that's what you're looking at. It's same horizontal and vertical. So it's quite a regular type of fault, really. It's not the exaggerated 5 times version that we show on the first lines. This is the map. We have computed reserve very different ways. To me, being a geophysicist, I think of 10,000 feet per second to approximate the velocity. I've used here 300 barrels per acre foot, and you're coming very rapidly with basically 2.5 billion barrels in the north, 2.5 billion in the south, 2.59 in the north, and possibly 32.4 TCF of gas. This is a frontier area, so I think we're allowed to be optimistic. Nova. First, the wedge. The ridge is the beginning of the ridge. It's right here. So it's going way up. And you can see again that wedge, these other turbidites, Tertiary, probably Paleocene in here, maybe Upper Cretaceous. We think these are the Turonian volcanics. Here is the Permo-Triassic system, and you want to drill a well right here. This is what was found again on these discoveries in Tanzania. Right here in Block 2, I think Lavani and some of the other prospects have been shown by Statoil, the operator, and Exxon to have about 21 TCF of gas. Again, one of these transforms is here. This is interesting. Again, this is the west side of the Sapitro-Marik concession. So this is the north here. This is a 3D, and again, you can see the marvelous map of the fossil Zambezi Delta here, the Mozambique Channel. Here's the depositional sink here. So you can see, and again, those transforms are there, those sinistral transform. You can see how they move. And someday, somebody is going to drill that. It's probably the same type of prospect as you have in Mozambique. In fact, the Mozambique production area is going to go all the way from Mozambique to the south of Madagascar. Time will tell, just like in the North Sea. We started in 1965, and it was only in 1990 that Peter Ziegler finally realized the total geological picture. So it'll be a while before we understand what's going on. The Magua structural complex is something somewhat different. This is a map of the Tertiary. Because again, when after India pulled out, it created a series of upheavals which lasted until even now. And you can see that there is the Betsy prospect. the Davy fracture zone turned volcanic right in here. We still get hints of the Syrah prospect right here. But right here, you've got no activity whatsoever. And this is where the Magua prospects lie, which tells you that they were not subjected to some sort of a movement during Tertiary, because as you know in geology you're looking for the basic concepts of source, maturation, migration, entrapment, and preservation. We have preservation here. These huge transforms have been mapped clearly on the seismic. And right here, we have a salt basin here, by the way, which we know, we expected that because when Madagascar pulled away from Somalia, there was a salt basin in Somalia. Mozambique Basin here is a salt basin, and so this is the tail end of the Mozambique Basin. Now, what you could see here is very simple. You have got those two range faults, and it's just like you take a towel, you pull that way, and you're going to have faults. We call them second-order drag faults. So here they are over here, and this is it. This is a rendition of our 3D. You can see the basement and probably basement and Triassic. Here's lower Jurassic. Here's the middle Jurassic. This is definitely the Coleman Plain. The Jurassic is down here. You have got upper Jurassic here, upper Jurassic Cretaceous. Now, if I could show this to you on the computer screen, you will see that you've got a deep basing fan. You've got all sorts of DHIs in here, and you've got all sorts of amplitude anomalies. So this is a major hunting area for a new well, because you're looking at basically maybe Tertiary, Cretaceous, Upper Jurassic, Middle Jurassic, Lower Jurassic, and Triassic. And of course, this is an inverted flower structure. This is the same thing uninterpreted. Now we know for a fact, because we have mapped the whole area, as you move to the north, this area comes up. As you move to the south, this area comes up. So we have some prospect on both sides of the flower structure. This is north-south. This is a north-south line. So, and you can see really probably right here the boundary between the Tertiary, Upper Cretaceous, Jurassic, Lower Jurassic, Triassic, and basement. Very simple. The place to drill is somewhere right here. And by the way, I want to remember, in the early days when I was working in Libya, the French companies, Total, were working in Algeria. And in those days, you drove across. There was no problem. We drove from one to the other in the desert, and we used to go and visit them. And we said, what you guys going to drill? Oh, they said, the biggest bump in the basin. If you want to find oil in the frontier area, pick the biggest bump and drill it. Then, of course, they found Assi Messaoud, 35 billion of oil, and Assi Armel, 35 TCF, and Assi Messaoud, 9 billion barrels. So you just go in there, and of course, again, you know, I keep telling my partners, the oil business is like gambling. On the Davy Ridge, you have one shot. Here, if you play roulette, you've got 6 shots. So your chances to find oil are a lot better. This is a map. This is the Lower Jurassic. This is the Lower Jurassic. This is the Upper Jurassic. And I wanted to show, this is a time slice. Now the time slice is again spectacular. You can see the Lower Jurassic here. You can see the drape of the Upper Jurassic. And I want to show you a picture. This is the Sheep Mountain anticline. This is what we have. We have the Lower Jurassic here, capped. This has been eroded, but that's where in our area, that's where the Upper Jurassic was. Reserves, whatever you want. It's a frontier country. You know, who knows? There are no wells there, so you might as well be optimistic. But both the IFP and the USGS have come up with this type of reserves. The USGS has an excellent publication. I'll give it to you. Well, they say there are basically 26 billion barrels of oil to be discovered. I'll go a little higher, but you know, we'll have to drill some wells. Thank you. Time to go to the beach.
Well, Bob, I'm sure he'll take some questions from the audience. So, and his son was supposed to.
Start with Jim first, because I know Alan's question is going to be very pointed, hard to answer, I'm sure.
Yeah, Bob, I remember a couple of decades ago when you were starting this, you know, there was a channel, probably a fracture zone, heavy oil in Madagascar, and some oil shows there in Tanzania. How has your thinking changed over the past couple of decades as you found out more about this?
Mostly, again, the Madagascar Microplate, the east of the zone. You know, in this business, you have to go with the flow. When we tried to sell this, there were the discoveries in Mozambique. And the only thing companies were interested in, and still remember that, we almost sold Shell on a deal, but they wanted to see gas in the Tertiary. And to this day, I think that we're probably better off to drill on the microplate than on the west side. Although the west side probably is also going to have some excellent discoveries, gas. But if you're looking for a more comprehensive system, probably the east side is better. And we know the Davy fracture. One thing we do know now, we have a much better feel for the Davy fracture zone. I don't want to go into the details. Yes, sir.
Very good talk. I have a practical question. With all the gas that's been discovered and all the analogs, wouldn't it be better to be chasing oil at this point in this frontier area? Because you're remote and all of the facilities that have been planned are going to be utilized by the operators that have actually built those. So in terms of first cash, not necessarily first tested oil, it would seem to me you'd want to try to focus on the oily areas, and with that in mind, what would you high grade to be oily?
That's what we're trying to do. We think that we're talking basically oil in here.
Okay.
But you know, you have no wells. And so Don Rusk, my partner, has done a lot of work on that. Again, we studied 102 wells, and we know, as you point out, there are complete petroleum systems from Tertiary all the way to Permo-Triassic. The only one that has been prospected so far, very much so, is the gas. But as Jim says, it doesn't catch. You know, the majors, no reflection, I hope there's no one here from Exxon or Shell, or they're risk adverse. They want to be a place where, you know, they call it politely the herd complex. If somebody finds gas, I'm still here, I'll bet you that to sell. If we now, by the way, it's official, we have Sapetro-Marex, Total as partners. Well, Total is going to drill that time slice I showed you. That's what they're going to do. And it's an all or nothing, but then for Total it's okay. A dry hole is just one among many other producers. To us, it's all or nothing. I want to go to Alan Bertagne now.
Oh.
I thought you had a question.
No.
Oh! Yes.
Yeah, I'm just interested
interested in, have you done a magnetic study of your prospect area? Because I see many features that look to me like bedded volcanics, especially those bright reflectors that are peeking over trough there. So have you able to overlay a magnetic study on your map?
Yeah, in fact, Tapetro, we have recorded both gravity and magnetics with the data. And, you know, you always try to go to the seismic first. So Sapetro are going through a study now, as you point out, to integrate both the significance of magnetics and gravity on some of these. I've got some, but I didn't show them. I would say they don't change much from what I've said, but again, it needs to be done. Yes, sir.
So what's the story about the provenance, the settlement provenance on the Magua prospect, which is on the east side of the Davy fracture zone?
It was a graben. You had two Karoo transforms, which were rejuvenated, but before that you had a graben there. Just like on the Davy fracture zone, you had a basin. You had a Jurassic Basin. Well, there you had a graben with a complete sedimentary sequence. When the fault started moving gradually, it came up as a flower structure. That's the mechanism. Did I answer your question?
No, the sediment provenance. Where's the sediment coming from?
Sediment.
Where's the sediment coming from?
Source.
Sediments, we based that. We just extend the wells that we have onshore Madagascar to here. That we can pretty well map. The various horizons, and we depend on the data we have onshore Madagascar. Remember, there's no well. You're totally right. We need a well here. We need a well here, and we need a well on the Sura prospect. And recently, I think it was on the North Slope Shell. It was in the AAPG bulletin. They drilled a well which they felt with that well was going to condemn, either prove or condemn the whole area. That's where we are here. Until we drill a well here, we'll never know whether this is prospective or not. And that is the kind of gamble that major companies would take in the 1950s. They won't take the gamble now.
The parking sticker.
Oh, yeah.
This is a nice of Texas.
Oh, good, yeah, Texas. That's where it all started, you know. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. It's been